Welcome to the Gutsy Fertility Podcast, where health empowerment meets heartfelt conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Mandy Patterson, functional naturopath and fertility expert. Each episode of the Gutsy Fertility Podcast is a journey through the most pressing health topics of our times, viewed through the lens of functional naturopathy and emotional empowerment. So get ready to get gutsy with me as we hop into today's podcast topic. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gutsy Fertility Podcast today. We're so excited that you're here. I am also excited about our guest. She is known as the Super Mom. She actually has 7 kids and has been pregnant 10 times, which is pretty cool. Like, we don't hear a lot about that these days. So Robin Stoltman founded Healing for the Soul and LLC on August 18th of 2018. During a time in her life, she thought she was broken in all areas. Gosh, can't we all attest to that? In her own life, suffering of more traumas than most experience in one lifetime gave her a stronger empathy, compassion, and authenticity in helping others. With over 5 years of experience in hypnotherapy, Robin is a force to be reckoned with. She's certified as a Maxwell Leadership Team member and boasting over 10 years of direct sales experience. She brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table. Her unique approach to healing and leadership development has helped countless individuals and businesses alike. I am so excited you're here, Robin.
I am so excited to be here, Mandy, and I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, she has a baby in tow there for all you guys. How old's your little guy now, Noah?
Oh, he is 8 weeks old, and it's 9 pregnancies that I've had.
Oh, 9. I'm sorry, 10. I said 10. Yeah, but 9 is a lot. Yeah, you had a set of twins in there too. So
yeah.
Thank you for correcting me on that. So you are, 8 weeks later, you're sitting in a chair and we're having this interview. So I love moms that are like go-getters and that have such a passion and zest for helping others, which you're definitely a testimony to that. So what an honor it is to have you here. So let's talk about your story. I love everybody that I bring on here. I love to share their stories because we all have things in our lives that we've gone through that can impart wisdom and, just pearls of wisdom for people like women and couples that are on their own fertility journey.
Yeah, so a lot of where I started was I was told that I would never have children. So I had that infertility background of nothing I was doing was working. Like most people, I couldn't afford IVF. It's quite expensive. So for me, yeah. I'm like, the most that I could do, which I did do, was the Clomid. Like, that's where my journey was. And even with Clomid, I still wasn't ovulating. I should have gotten pregnant, but I didn't.
Yeah. Did you have a history of like, as an adolescent or early teen years, were you ever given a diagnosis by your doctor?
I was after I started going through the fertility journey. So when I was a kid, my period did not come till I was 14. So it was one of those, we were going to put you on we were going to start the fertility, not the fertility process necessarily, but the jump start to help you get your period, to start doing those things, just so that that would happen because I was so late. But at the same time, I was told that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Okay, so you were given the PCOS diagnosis.
Yeah, and then
did you experience really painful periods and did that have an impact on you?
No, so I had hypomenorrhea. So that hypomenorrhea is, that's where you don't really ovulate, you don't, nothing.
No.
And I still have that diagnosis, but I've been able to work with that diagnosis along with the PCOS part of it to conceive. Obviously, that's why I've got so many children now.
Right. So what's your secret sauce? Because I'm sure everybody's like, okay, it's one thing to go to a fertility expert, but someone that actually, and it's been my experience as well, because after the birth of my first one, he was a 28-week preemie, weighed 1 pound and 14 ounces. And they told me after preeclampsia and severe HELP syndrome, which is kidney and liver failure, you're never going to go on and have any more children. That's what they told me. And honestly, frankly, I was scared because, I almost died during childbirth and was pretty much in a drug-induced coma for several days after his birth. And so, let's talk about that. Let's dive into what you started learning as a consumer to really kind of flip the switch and not do it with any really sort of medical help.
The exact route that I decided to go. And that's amazing that, your story is typical and a little bit for how the doctors are. Because that's how, it amazes me how the doctors are, they're more, so doctors, they study medicine. They don't understand the mind-body connection and how it works. So one of the suggestions that they gave me was, you can't have children. You're pretty much lucky that you've got the one, and just go from there. That's pretty much what they tell your person. Or they're just I was told, enjoy my sister's children because, she could have kids and I couldn't.
Oh, wow. And some of the things that I feel like women are told are just, it's sad. Really. I don't have another real word for it other than, and then so many people take that at face value, internalize it, that their body's broken, that, their body can't do this or do that. And then we end up with trauma from that, right?
Yes, they most definitely do. And that's the part that really frustrates and I get very angry about with doctors, because it's one, I told my doctors, you're not God. They literally told me after I had my daughter in 2020, they told me right before I went in for so it would have been, so I'm trying to think what C-section number all my children have been C-sections, by the way. This is my 7th C-section.
Okay, I've had 6. So I've had 6 as well.
You totally get it. Yes. So my daughter, when I had her, the doctor literally told me, but right before I went in, she's like, you know that you've got a 10% chance in dying next time from ovarian rupture. And I'm I looked straight at her, jaw dropped after I told her, and since when are you God? That's literally where I've been at. It's when these doctors tell me that, in the beginning when I was told I wouldn't have children, I remember making a commitment and a promise to myself when I held my niece, who was born April 5th, 2008. I remember the day I held my niece, because I was just told I would never be able to have children. They told me medically I wouldn't be able to. And so at that point, I made a decision that I would do whatever it took to be able to conceive.
Yeah.
So I remember making that commitment.
Yeah. So what did that, so you got pregnant with your first, was that unexpected then? You guys weren't trying? What did that look like?
We were trying, but it was to the point where I just gave up, because I'm nothing's working. Nothing's, at this point when my husband and I, when we did get pregnant, it was, I had already gone to see several different OBs, and all of them told me, they said, just go get drunk as a skunk and you'll get pregnant. You just got to relax. All the things that we're told. Go relax. Go get drunk. Go just let your body flow. And it's none of that stuff worked. So at that point.
So how long had you guys been trying? Up until that point? How long?
For my husband and I, it would have been at that point a good 4 years.
Okay.
And nothing. And it was very frustrating. And I was just I'm done. It's not working, obviously. And so when we did get married, I told my husband, I said, I'm sorry we won't be able to have kids. I felt horrible, because I'm what kind of guy wants to find a woman that can't get pregnant? I can't bring anything to the marriage. But then, of course, God has other plans. So I'm
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, your faith is very strong.
It is.
So when you started trying to conceive, how old were you?
Well, the doctors always go by the first time you have unprotected sex.
Yeah.
In our case, we tried before we got married. So that would have been in May 2009 is when we got together. And then we didn't actually conceive until Thanksgiving. I didn't know that I was pregnant until Thanksgiving of 2012, when it would have been.
Wow. So how old were you then?
Actually, 2013 is when we got pregnant, because it would be 2014 is when we miscarried. 2013 and 2014 is when we miscarried, because I had the twins. So it would have been 2013 for Thanksgiving. Okay. So 2009 to Thanksgiving there. So it's a little off on the little over 3 years that we dealt with it, for the two of us, it was.
Yeah. Right. So, and how old would you have been, Robin? Like then, when you guys started trying? Like, I'm just
I would have been 23.
23.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's what I'm trying to like figure out. Yeah. I mean, like you're in your early 20s, like, and you're being told this. I mean, what are some of the, like, what came up for you in that? Like, was it despair, or was it like, what were the feelings that you had around that?
Okay, so like the feelings that I had on that, I had to switch him. Yeah. The feelings that I dealt with when I was told that I would never be able to have children was a lot of that heartbreak. I felt worthless. I felt hopeless.
Yeah.
I'm like, there has to be something. Like, I'm not going to give up on what I wanted. I've always wanted 11 children. I'm almost to my goal. I've only got one more to go before I hit 40 years old, because literally Noah was born a week after I just turned 38 this year. So I'm like, I'm almost to my 11 children, and people are like, why do you want 11? I'm like, I don't know, take it up with God. I've always wanted a big family. I hated having just me and my sister. That was my husband comes from one child, and that was him, and that was it. So a lot of those feelings I had was like, I wanted to be able to have my children. Like, I remember being on my hands and knees, screaming and praying and screaming, yelling at God many times, just give me one.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I seriously was doing. I just wanted to have at least one baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you really capture what a lot of women struggle with, right? I mean, there's so much emotional like ties there, and just feelings of their body failing them, and that their body's broke, and it's a lot. So with your experience with infertility, like what have you found that has been helpful when you share with others? Because you coach people in the space, and like, what are some like things that you recommend to them?
So the number one thing that I recommend to everybody is, it's going to sound counterintuitive, and I know that the medical field don't like it.
Yeah.
But don't listen to your doctor. When they're sitting there, they're saying that you can't have children, that this and that. If it's unexplained, and like the PCOS, you can fix both. Like PCOS,
yes.
How I fixed it for me, because like I have the hypomenorrhea yet, yes. However, how I fixed it was I had to change my diet. I went gluten-free.
Sure.
Like, that was the number one thing that I did. Like, I went gluten-free. And then I made that commitment, that promise to myself that no matter what, I was going to make it happen.
Okay, cool. I love that. So how did you find out about gluten being inflammatory, or like what made you make that change?
I was talking to other women. Like, I was scanning the internet. I'm like, something has to work. Like, I knew like it was part of my problem, but like I knew it was part me. And my husband's like, he was not helpful at all. He's like, it's you that's the problem. You're the reason why we can't have kids. And I'm like, how do we know it's not you? Because it's always.
And see, that is a really important point that you bring up. And we actually teach a lot on that. My partner and I, is that, unfortunately, like many women think that they're the problem, and people don't understand it. Like it's 50-50, right? Like fortuitous painful. And so like, we know that men are really struggling with the infertility as well. It's not just women.
Yeah, and that's the blessing in it, because men, they're able to increase their sperm count so much easier. And the doctors are like, there's no way to increase it. People think, try these lotions, potions, and pills, and it'll help. And no, what it is it comes down to the mindset 100%. Because I'm not sorry, but when I've helped other men increase their sperm count, just using their mind, that's telling me something. We've got case studies on how powerful the mind is. just in the hypnosis world alone, like we've got case studies that prove that you can use the hypnosis to increase sperm count. You can use it to get rid of the erectile dysfunction. Like we know this, it's just getting rid of that root cause. And so like for me, when I did figure all this out, after I learned about hypnosis, I was like, this is like, I worked backwards. I started working backwards. How did I do it? How did I go from there was no chance to all of a sudden I'm a baby making machine? How did I do it? So like, and other women that have used my program get pregnant one after the other so far. And I've told them I'm not responsible for that part. That's on your own. I have not figured out how to shut it off yet.
Right. Well, I do think you bring up a really important point, which is that mental, emotional stress that we have. And honestly, that can be as toxic as the environmental things that we're up against, the food issues we have, the chemicals and the pesticides, herbicides that are being sprayed on our foods. And many times I feel like that is most people's issues, is that their autonomic nervous system is not primed for getting pregnant, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And that's why I said the gluten-free. That's where I, like it's the gluten-free. It's the eating the holistic foods. It's switching to the vitamins. That's why I said it sounds counterintuitive to not listen to the doctor on that. But like I said, the doctors, they study medicine. They only know medicine. They don't understand the mind-body connection. They don't understand in society that women are programmed from the time they're born that children are bad. Children should be seen and not heard. Like we are told this. And all of that programming does not help. That 100% affects your fertility. And people may say, oh, no, it does not. Yes, it does. We get all of our programming from the time we are conceived to the time we're 8 years old. That's when we're taking in the most information about how we're supposed to function in society. And that's where a lot of that early programming for how we are set up fertility-wise comes into play. That's why people believe more in the doctors, that they can help cure a person, because the government can send the cures, but yet I can't tell you that I can cure you. But you have all of the resources within you to get pregnant. You have all the resources you'll ever need in between your 2 ears. Like that's the reason why we have that brain. And that's where I get fired up and wired up when I talk about this, because it's like, if I had not figured it out, I wouldn't be able to have this gift.
Sure.
And I want more babies. Like my goal by the time I take my last breath, because I don't know when it is, I want to be able to have 1 million babies be born. Like that is what my mission is.
I love that goal. That's a great goal.
But it's trying to reach all those women to be like, hey, you can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think a big piece of it is just people having being equipped with the tools to become their own best advocates. And once we realize and recognize that switch, when that can go off, like we can move mountains. It's like that super mom power when there's like a kid or like under a car or something and the mom like lifts the car up. Like we are like God divine, like in us, and we have all of what we need within us. And so it has been like our society to be like, oh, well, you need to go to the doctor for this, or you need to ask the teacher for this. And you bring up great points there, because we have been conditioned and we've been conditioned to just take with what's told to us and to, just take it and not question that. And that authority piece is a problem, like for us in the space that like are dealing with health issues and infertility issues, hormone issues, all of those things. So, how do you find, so like in the hypnotherapy world, how did you find like that mind-body connection was blocking you from conception? Because I know we can dig into the foods and we can dig into the toxins and all that, but what about that mind-body connection?
Well, that's why I worked backwards, because when I finally figured it out, like after I went to the college, I did a mind map. And I'm like, there has to be things. And I'm like, okay. So when I would write down one thing, So like one of the things was I was around my niece more. Like I worked in a daycare. So I'm like, okay, that's one part.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was working with kids. Okay. So what was I feeling? What was I doing? What was I eating? What was my mind at that time? And I was like, well, I remember feeling hopeless. I remember feeling like this is not going to work. So like, I remember those feelings. Then it's like, okay, so then how did I feel when I was with my niece? How did I feel when I was with my nephew? Like, what was I feeling? And I'm like, well, I was feeling joy. I was feeling happiness. Like I was feeling like on top of the world. So I was able to really figure that out through that mind mapping of what it was that I was doing. And then that's when I realized, okay, I need to be around the kids more. I need to be around people who like children. That's been the hardest part for a lot of people, is finding people like myself that want children, that realize without kids, we don't have anybody to work at McDonald's. Like we don't have anybody to continue the world. Like there's a reason why we need to be here, because that overpopulation is what people are told. The world's too populated. No, it's not. Yeah. That's the biggest lie people want people to believe, because that shuts down the fertility. It shuts that down of like, oh, there's too many people. There's not enough to go around. Well, that's what Satan wants you to believe, because how else is he going to win? Like he is he attacks the mind. And so that's one of his tactics is there's not enough to go around. He wants you to believe in lack. That's why people are struggling with money. They struggle with infertility. They struggle with, I have depression. Okay, so what are you doing to fix that? And so that's where that rabbit hole I went down, specifically for that reason, is because that's what I started figuring out. I was on the medications. I did believe my doctors were God. I did those things that were not helpful. And then when I started figuring it out, I was just like, everybody needs to know this.
Yeah. Was there somebody like that it comes to mind that like just really impacted your life, that you were kind of watching them? And I know like so many people are out on social media, but who was it like that was that switch for you that you were like, oh my goodness?
For me, it was, I hit rock bottom. Like there wasn't anybody else following on social media.
Nobody else.
No, and I hit rock bottom so hard and so fast in my life. And it, like, everybody has their own version of rock bottom. But I do believe 100% no one's going to make a change until they hit the emotional rock bottom so hard and so fast that it's like you feel like your life is being threatened. Like I either make this change or I'm going to lose everything that has ever had value to me in my life. And so when I hit that rock bottom, that's when I'm like, I have to be willing to do whatever it takes. And that's
What did that look like for you? Like, because I'm sure many on here would appreciate hearing like how was that for you? I mean,
well, I've hit rock bottom a couple times, the hardest. Literally, my brain injury was one of them.
So what is that? Okay, let's talk about that. So as like my master's was in neuro. So and I've over the years worked in the hospital, subacute settings, and traumatic brain injuries are one of my areas. So that can have a real impact on your overall mental functioning. So how did this happen? Let's talk about that.
My brain injury, that happened when I was 16 years old. I was basically going down the hill on a very large highway. It was very steep. And this highway, when I was going downhill, my bike chain wrapped around my back tire. I didn't know it. And so I did the only thing that I knew to do at that time, which was pray and ask God to keep me alive for my future husband, my kids, and my sister. Like that's all I was concerned about at that time. And so I'm very thankful I had my helmet on, because if I had not had my bicycle helmet on, I would have been killed. But I bike chain wrapped around, and then I went down onto my right side. And then the best way I can explain was that I remember like my lights were flickering on in my brain. They're flickering on and off like lightning bolts, like super fast. And then it's like my whole system like turned back on. And then there was 3 cars that were coming down the hill. And I was told that part of it, I was told. because I didn't know, because I was still unconscious at that point. But somebody had pulled me off the side of the road so I would not get hit, because where I landed was dead center blind spot. No vehicle would have been able to see me. So I know that, one, I was pulled off by side of the road because God pulled me off to the side of the road. Like, there's an angel man that was there, pulled me off. So I remembered that part of it. But after that, it's like I had amnesia. I went through a lot, but the doctors never helped me at any point, because back in 2002, the doctors thought, well, you lose your brain cells. Like, they didn't know these different things that they know now. But
did you spend time in the hospital? Like, I mean,
nope, I didn't get any help. I didn't get any speech. I didn't get any help from it. During that time, I do remember going through a lot. And of course, I was medicated a lot because, again, it goes back to doctors, no medication. They don't understand the mind-body connection. And I think that part did not help me in my recovery after brain injury. But I will say that I'm stronger because of it.
Sure. Did you struggle with like learning issues after that? Did you have brain fog? Like,
yeah. So a lot of that, what I dealt with after my brain injury was like, one of it's been the memory. Like, that's been an ongoing, but it's that short-term memory. Long-term, I'm fine.
Sure.
But it's that short-term memory. It's being able to do things differently. So like, I know everybody's like, oh, they love online. Like, that's how they remember things. For me, my CRM system is my paper calendar. And I'm not sorry, but like, that's how I remember to do things. And then
you write it down.
So like, I dealt with a lot of the pain. I dealt with a lot of, that's when I started having more of that period problems afterwards. And then like, I don't remember to eat. And people are like, oh, that'd be a good thing to, and I'm like, no, it is not. Because that's also why I'm heavy too. Because then the brain shuts off of, now I'm in starvation mode because I can't remember to eat. So the only time I do remember to eat is when I'm pregnant, oddly enough.
Well, and what's interesting is with traumatic injury, brain injury, we know this from research, is that it impacts and disrupts the microbiome. And we know how intimately connected and the gut-brain connection happens together. And so that I find that a lot of time with traumatic brain that it does impact that, right? And can then has negative effects on like mental functioning and processing and short-term memory and some deal with brain fog and like so many things. So that's interesting to hear your story and how that could possibly be still impacting you today.
Oh, I'm sure it still is. It's just that I haven't let things stop me.
No, you've learned how to adapt.
Yeah, I definitely have. I think that's like the biggest thing, because I remember after brain injury, I do remember like I'd get things from the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, and I would read about like most people with brain injury, they only have 1 to 2 children, if any, just because of how hard it is. And most people can't drive. Most people that have brain injury, they also have to have somebody help them. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. So I am very thankful to God that I have the ability to run my own business. I have the ability to have all these kids. Like, I'm able to do it. But then it also holds me back. Like, when I'm talking to different people, I'm like, do they look at me differently when they know that I've got a brain injury than they would look at somebody who doesn't have one? But it's like, at the same time, it's like, I have that. Yes. Do I let it stop me? No. Do I wake up more tired? Do I, I can't function as well some days? Yes. But I've still learned, okay, I need a break. I need to do this. Other people also need breaks too, because I'm the type of person, I will go sun up to sundown without remembering that I need to take a break. So it's like, I've done different things to help me. Like my baby, he helps me remember, okay, you need a break. You need to do things, so it's, I use them for that purpose. Yes.
It's created resiliency in you, which I love.
Yes, it definitely has. And I think a lot more women need that, because it does develop that belief in yourself. And that's what a lot of people that in fertility, they struggle with, that belief in themselves, because it's not fun when you hear the doctor say you can't have children. And it's heartbreaking. but it's still, okay, what can I do? What haven't I done that I could be doing? And I think making a decision, they've done enough studies that when you make a decision and you commit to it, it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's even pulling in that accountability. That's why, for many, like I'll see just working with them a month and then they're able to get pregnant, and it's that positive reinforcement and support. Yeah. Like they say, like in psychology or kind of that arena, you want to be around the five people that you're around the most are going to be most influential on your life. So if you're hanging around positive people that have healthy mindsets, healthy bodies, all of those things, then like that's going to positively impact you. It's that energy connection which I love.
That is very true. That's why I said for surrounding yourself, like when you want to get pregnant, surrounding yourself around people who love children, who have children, yep. And people who aren't sitting here saying children are expensive. But do people ever stop when people say that children are expensive? Do they ever stop and really think about their toys that they have? They don't stop and think about that jet ski that they don't need. They don't stop and think about that $80,000 truck that they really didn't need. That's expensive. You want to talk expensive. What about that iPhone that you just bought? What about this that you just bought? That's expensive. When it comes to diapers, it's not that much. They're in them just for that little bit. And that baby is your legacy. That baby gets to be like your pride and joy. Like when I leave this world, nobody's going to really know who I am, by then. But my children are my legacy. I have the blessing of 7 living children that get to tell the world who their mom was. I've got 7 children that get to go out there and say, you know what? My mama taught me this. My mama taught me this. My children know what law of attraction is. They understand how to use a vision board. And the oldest has, not the oldest, he's 8, but the other one is 7. And he can tell you how a vision board works. He can tell you how, he's got autism too on top of it all. But he can tell you how that works. Like, sure. I don't know about you, but it took me 30 years to figure out how to attract what I do want to have happen in life. So I'm pretty proud that my son already knows how to do that.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really important point that we each have a choice to make. And, I have many people come to me needing help and, wanting to get healthier, but like many just want to pay a $50 copay. And unfortunately, I think that's a huge problem is that, we have been wired to believe that if we pay our $40 or $50 copay, then we're going to get health. And unfortunately, that is not true, right? Yeah. So, we each are faced with how do we use our resources. And so I think having a clear vision on what we want is the first step in identifying the path on how we get there.
It is.
So, yeah. So when you are working with couples that are in the infertility space with the hypnotherapy, do you do that through telehealth, or do you do it through, do you have like a local office? Like how can people learn more about hypnotherapy and how it could help them on their journey?
So the best way is I can do all my services online. So that's a huge blessing is that I can do it through Zoom. That's the platform that thankfully I no longer have to explain what Zoom is. That did work in my benefit. So like that's the best platform that I do use. The best way to get in contact with me was going to be my cell phone number and then my website. Sure. So my cell phone is 320-460-0272, and you can call or text that. Otherwise, the other is my website, which is healingforthesoulplus.com.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And what would be the prerequisites for doing hypnotherapy? Do you have them fill out a health history form to get to know them better? Or like, what is your exact processes in figuring
My exact process is, one, you have to be able to have the finances just because it is not insurance. Like I don't take insurance, sure. So that can be a barrier for some people right there. The other part is I do have them fill out like a health history form, just because that helps tell me, like, if you grew up with a childhood that has abuse, for example, is that going to affect your ability to have children? Yes. Like, if you were told children should be seen and never heard, does that affect your fertility? Yes. So, like, that's where that health history form does help. It also helps to know if you have, something else like endometriosis, for example. That's going to be harder to overcome. Can it be overcome? Yes. You're going to have to work with your doctor on that in addition to the mind-body part of it. So there's like some of those things you do have to work with the doctor, yes. But at the same time, having me help you navigate like the unexplained infertility, a lot of that unexplained part is just the mind is shut off from it and being able to turn it back on, which is possible.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if that helps explain the question that you had asked.
It does. It does. And I think like I want the listeners to understand that like unresolved trauma and some of the things that you're discussing, like adverse childhood experiences and events, and that's even like into our adolescent and adult years. Like we all have some sorts of trauma that can manifest itself in physical disease states in the body. And so it's important to go in and work through some of that. And so that can be really helpful. It sounds like that's how you can guide people on their journey. That's like one of the ways.
It is. Because like, for example, like with me being sexually abused, that does play into the infertility part. And so that's why I'm like being able to help that, but also like one of the techniques that I do use, like especially when it comes to loss. So say, for example, you have the secondary infertility, but you've had a loss. So when you've got the child loss, being able to use a technique that I call the empty cradle, being able to talk to that baby that you should have had, that you would have had, being able to talk to them, being able to help heal that part will allow it to make your body easier to allow for the egg and sperm to meet. So like that's an example of one way to help with that.
And how has that helped you? Because like, I know that you've experienced loss, right? I mean, 2 pregnancies that you had emotional trauma you had to work through. I'm assuming that you used hypnotherapy with yourself or went to a professional that helped you walk through that. What did that look like for you? Because I know so many women here are struggling with loss, and that's like a topic that we don't really talk a lot about, right?
It's one that we definitely don't. So when I experienced my miscarriage, because that was my first pregnancy, it was my identical twins. I miscarried them 2 different dates, 2 different years. So when I had miscarried them, I had gotten the idea from a friend of mine to release balloons, to still have a funeral for them because they still existed. And yes, it was a miscarriage, so it was before 12 weeks. So I had to have a DNC as well. But what I did was I had a balloon release. I still had a funeral. I still did that for them. And what that did and how the mind body works is it was able to allow for closure. It was able to be like, it's okay. Like I can move on. And so when I was releasing the 2 balloons, it really helped me in that of, okay, my children, they're with God. They're home. I don't have to worry about them anymore. So it did give me that peace that I needed. Closure. From that closure part of it. And so when I had miscarried again with a singleton, that's what I did, the exact same thing again, because it was helpful. And so that allows for that healing. It allows for that, this is my child. They still existed. So when people ask me, like, how many children do you have? And they're like, well, I'm like, I have 10 children. You can't tell me that I have just the 7 living children, because I don't. I have 10. I have carried that many lives. They all had a heartbeat.
Yeah. That's profound. I think when we can verbalize that, right? Then it puts it out into the space, and then it, for whatever reason, it becomes more important because we're speaking it. And I think that so many of us like can lose our way when we stop speaking our truth, And so I love how you processed through that and came to that conclusion. It's hard and heavy.
It is. And the blessing is that my mom, she had a miscarriage before she had me. And so my mom, she had never done that. And so I'm like, well, oh, wow. I'm going to take in, she needs to do this too. I'm like, just try it. So what I did was I knew the date of her miscarriage, and I knew it was in the month of April. Lo and behold, this is the month of April that we're recording.
This is the month of April, right.
And so what I did was I went to the dollar store, and I told the dollar store lady, I'm like, I think it was like 33 balloons, something like that at the time. And I'm like, I want all these balloons. I wanted it in my mom's favorite color, which was blue. And I told the lady what I was doing. And she was shocked. And she started crying because she remembered her baby that she had miscarried. And she had told me about it. And she's like, you're a very good daughter. Because she had never talked to anyone about her miscarriage. Yeah. And so when I did that, she was able to heal. And then my mom, did the balloon release. And she's like, that's the first time in her life she was finally able to let her baby go. And so that's where that healing part came in. So it's like, it sounds simple. It is. And it's small, yes. But it's powerful to allow the body just to have that. And then, like I said, I mentioned the empty cradle as well. And that's being able to do that hypnosis of where you're being able to speak with that baby. You're being able to be like, okay, this baby can move on. Like, I'm able to talk with this baby. The mind is just so amazing that it allows for healing, but you have to be willing to give your body a chance to want to heal. And a lot of people are scared of that. That's why I'm like, the balloons was the easiest way.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever do any grief support groups, or did you and your husband attend anything like that when you guys were going through all of that? Because I know him having to deal with the loss as well. We deal with things in our own ways.
Yeah, we do. Right? So initially I didn't know what to do. Like I said, I did the balloons. My husband, he was there, of course. But he's told me, he didn't carry the babies. It didn't do as much to him as what it did to me. And he's seen what I went through. So his way was get pregnant right away. And me, I'm like, but now that we're pregnant again, I couldn't properly, it wasn't helpful because that's what I was told by one of the OBs, not the OB, but one of the ultrasound techs told me when I had my first miscarriage. She's like, just get pregnant right away. You'll feel better. But people forget that you need to heal. You can't replace a child. You just can't. It's impossible. Nope. And so it's like, that was not helpful advice. And like I said, my husband, his was just have another one. And I'm like, but now I have trouble connecting to this baby. It took me 3 months to get along with the last one that I had. Not this one I got right now.
I think that's really important now, how you bring up the distinction in how women process and men process. We are very different. And I do think from the women's standpoint, the hormones and the body going through all of those changes, and then us feeling like, well, if we're going to move on, then, oh.
Noah's always got to have his say.
That's kids in general.
It always is every time you want to do something. But no, I appreciate it because I'm able to obviously laugh and move on from it. But
yeah, right.
It's like I said, when I had that loss, my husband, like I said, that's how he reacted to it. I didn't react, exactly the same way, like I said, because it's well, there's still a baby. I still held life. I still need to honor this life that I had held. And that's why I said some of those things that I did do, like the balloon release, being able to talk to my baby, that did help out. And he's talking about it now that he wish he would have done things a little different. And I'm like, well, kind of too late there, but
Yeah. 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 So we'll bring this back around. So I know that you work with women. Is it are couples like one-to-one in group coaching, or how do you approach things in your practice?
So the easiest way is to work with them one-on-one. So it's
okay,
woman first, then the husband, just because, you know, like her ideas, like I said, it's one of those, it's hard to, like how she was brought up is going to be different than how her husband was brought up. How she's going to handle pregnancy is going to be different than the husband. Like they're both going to have different programming, different thoughts of how the parenting part's going to work. And being able to get both of those key pieces makes the couple part of it, when they both come together, so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So how quickly can people see results from doing like hypnotherapy?
How far I'm
like
at 30 to 60 days they get pregnant. That's where I've been at.
Wow.
And I'm like, but I tell people 90 days just in case I get that one couple that's just a little more troublesome to work with. And by troublesome, I just mean like if they've got the trauma in the background that they also have to deal with. Or
is that like a session a week then?
yes,
like
that's every week for that 30 to 60 days. But it's been pretty amazing because it's like, that's where I've gotten to the point, just don't even tell anybody how it works, because then they get pregnant. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I should have done things a little different.
Up to you on that.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So cool. I love what you're doing. I love how you're helping women and you're helping couples in such a needed space, right? I mean, it's a lot to go through an infertility journey.
Yeah, and I know that the infertility is increasing right now too. And I'm like, it's only increasing because of society's programming. That's the sole reason. If that were to stop, like the overpopulation, children are expensive, you know, children shouldn't be seen and heard, and like all the stuff that's going on in the schools, people don't realize that's what's affecting them. That affects them more than anything.
And it is a lot of factors. I mean, it's complicated, but I do think the biggest thing that people need to understand is they have the power within them to start making changes and to not rely on anybody else. Like we are, you know, our own force on this planet. And, you know, I like how you said, when we set our mind to something, and we make that commitment, then we can do amazing things.
Most definitely. And that's like the biggest thing too, is, you know, I'm not trying to knock doctors, so I don't want anybody to think that. It's just, they study medicine. They don't really understand how the mind and body is connected. So like when you're in the doctor's office, that's why they call it white coat syndrome. Yeah. That's the reason why some of those things exist. So it's like, take it with a grain of salt. Doctors, they can help. They do have the tools. It's just, you've got to know, how bad do you really want to be able to have that baby? Are you willing to do whatever it takes?
Yeah, I think the most important thing too is to find someone that you align with that will listen, right? Because like every time, like, you know, my partner who's a DO, she's a doctor of osteopathy. We work with couples, like we work to empower them. They actually are the experts on their own bodies. And then we educate and equip them with the tools to be like, just badass. Like, I'm going to say that here. So then they have those tools, and then like they'll have those tools for lifelong to be healthy individuals and have healthy babies and healthy children. And I think, you know, that's where we really align, is healthy generations is what we want to see.
Yeah. So, and that's key, because it's like all the generation, nobody talks about the generational trauma either. They don't figure that out. Like weight, I've had a couple people say, well, weight's not trauma related. It's like fertility, that's not trauma related. Yes, it is. Because it's like, well, you get some people that are too skinny. Well, yes, that's still a trauma, because they would have seen something they did not like from a person who was heavy. But you wouldn't know that decision that you made when you were like 3. You wouldn't have known that. Yeah. But can you, You don't look for anything in hypnosis. That's another thing that people think. You just go looking for problems. No, if you don't remember it, we don't go there. But my thing is that when it does come to that, it's being able to, okay, I've got this problem. I don't know where it come from, but this is how I'd rather feel instead. I want to feel that new baby in my arms. I want to be able to smell the scent of my own baby. I want to be able to hold that baby and being able to give that to them. Like you said, it's that empowerment. And you're not going to get that in that typical doctors. Like they told me, you can't never have babies. Just go enjoy your sisters. And it's like, I'm going to find a way. So I literally became the person that I needed. So that's my biggest advocate. My biggest person that I follow now is myself, because I finally became who it was I needed, because nobody else was going to help me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. We have the power to make those changes and are really, in essence, our best advocates. Yep. So, and our best doctors, honestly. I think we're all can be the CEO of our own health, and we just have to spend some time doing some research and educating ourselves. And frankly, like so many times, I feel like it just goes back to the foundations of health, which, like, you know, you kind of dig into with that hypnotherapy. We also dig into that in our program, our group coaching program. And then also when I work one-on-one with individuals, but, you know, going back to good quality food that doesn't have all kinds of toxins and pesticides and herbicides, and sleep and movement and faith. Faith is a huge one. Right. And I think you guys are very faith oriented, as well as myself and our family. And, you know, that we really rely on that. That's our strength. So I really appreciate you sharing your superpowers with us today, Robin. And like, you're total badass to be on here with a baby, an 8-week-old baby. You're nursing him and doing all the things. So you're so admirable to me. So let's round out with where the audience can find you again, online and on social media.
So the best way is going to be, like I said, my cell phone. It's the 320-460-0272. Yes, I'm from Minnesota, but hey, it's all good. The other way is going to be my website. It's thehealingforthesoulplus.com. And then on social media, just look for Healing for the Soul Plus, or just Healing for the Soul. And then you'll see me or my contact information on there. And then the other is Robin Stoltman. So if you just look for me in those ways. And I've been in a book called Naturally Conceived as well. And so that's another book that I've been in. So I appreciate being a guest on this show. I'm really hoping that women, and especially the men, when you hear this, just take what you want with a grain of salt with everything that I've said. But I will say this, that your mind is extremely powerful. You want to be able to have that baby. I know I can help get you there. And like I said, I know that change is hard. It's not easy. We are not wired for change. But I will say that it is 1,000% worth it. Because if I had not found out how to get pregnant, I wouldn't be able to have my babies. And I'm forever thankful that I have my babies. But I'm not responsible if you can't shut the power off once it starts. That is my one claim.
Well, we appreciate you coming on here and imparting your wisdom. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You made it to the end of the episode. Let's keep this Gutsy fertility party going with some next steps to empower you along your wellness journey.